month, NASM is giving you free courses. That's right, free courses each month just for being part of the NASM family. Learn about everything ranging from nutrition to strength, weight loss to stress relief, and everything in between. Click the link in the bio for information and to claim your free course before they're gone.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hello, and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and today joining us is a mate from down under enjoying some cool weather while we are in our summer phase. Please welcome our friend sharing some trainer success tips with us today, Mr. Daine McDonald. How you doing, sir?
I'm really well, Rick. Great to be here, mate. You are right. It is. We are in our winter still, but Australian winters aren't like US winters, so it's. I'm pretty blessed in that respect.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, if looking at your background, that is not where I would be, at least not in New York City, in the middle of our yeah, it's a different look, a different feel for sure.
Definitely.
Well, look, hey, I'm happy that you're joining us today, and it's nice to have somebody with a different perspective. I'm going to tell you some of the things that I know about Australia fitness. Yep. And one of the major things that I know is that there's a really great research that comes out of Australia in regard to performance and strength and conditioning. So that's definitely something that is solid about some of the things coming out of Australia. And I know that you've worked with some heavy hitters, and you started as a personal trainer, and you're one of those people, and this is something I appreciate, Daine. You're one of those people that kind of level up and level up and level up again. And when you say, what do you do? And they say, I'm a personal trainer. And you're like, I feel like you're too qualified to say that. But with that said, I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are, your story, and we're going to talk about some trainer success tips from you and your company, Clean Health Fitness.
Yeah, I mean, look, definitely the research side of things here in Australia, we're pretty blessed, right? I mean, I think, going back to the 80s, you had people like Ian King, who worked very closely with the late Charles Poliquin in SNC and, working with a lot of athletes and things like that. So I think, culturally for PTs, there's been a lot of opportunity here in Australia to learn from people that are very well renowned. And I think for me, my journey, I started as a PT back in 2002 now, so just under 20 years ago. And, back then, I mean, the industry was very different, as you would know, right? Like, PTs were, maybe earning $30, $40, $50 an hour. It wasn't really an industry the way it is today. Like there was a lot of group exercise, boxercise, outdoor boot camps. Coming into the fitness industry back in that era, it was not looked at as a place that you could, build a long-term career path. So, for me, one of the points of difference that I wanted to, get into as soon as I started was to really just level myself up, educate myself, and I remember back then actually looking at NASM courses and stuff like that, because you guys have been around for so long. And, the first few years of my career, I spent time in college and uni, doing all of the degrees and stuff like that. And, I got into the industry, quite aggressively, like within kind of 6 weeks of working in my first, commercial gym full time, I was doing 40, 50 PT sessions a week. Within kind of 6 months of kind of working in gyms, I was training other trainers because I had other trainers coming to me asking, how I got myself into shape or how I got my clients into shape. Back then I kind of would walk around at, 220 pounds and sub 10% body fat, right? So I looked like I could step up on a bodybuilding stage. And I think, that was one of my things early on was that, you needed to be an embodiment of your brand. You needed to be an embodiment of what you were putting out there as a health professional, which was to practice what you preach. And, even though I kind of, never kind of did bodybuilding shows or things like that, I would kind of use the way that I looked back then as an opening to attract clients that, actually when they started speaking to me, they'd realize that I was, there was a little bit of brains inside of the broad that they were seeing.
A little bit of substance behind all that muscle, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. Now, when you went to university, did you study exercise science that early on?
Yeah, so I started out with I did a diploma in fitness, a diploma in strength and conditioning, and then I did a bachelor degree in exercise and sports science, and then I did an advanced diploma in nutritional medicine. So by the time it came around 2006, 2007, I was, one of the few duly qualified PTs and nutritionists in the industry at I
Sure.
think at the age, what was I back then? I'm trying to remember now, at about the age of 25, 26. And, that really allowed me to kind of build the philosophies of which I kind of built Clean Health around, which was, most PTs back then, and even today to a certain extent, a client will come in through the door and, want to just train with a trainer straight away. And for me back then, I wasn't doing my due diligence if I was getting them straight into a PT session, right? So this is where the kind of philosophy of lifestyle, nutrition, and training came from. And what that means was, before I would even get into training clients, I'd spend a good hour assessing their lifestyle. And that went from everything from assessing their anthropometric data to assessing their stress, their sleep, their circadian rhythms, all different type of things that, they were doing the other 23 hours of the day when they weren't in the gym. And, back then, today that might seem as like, this is what we do, but like back in 2005, 2006, 2007, that was quite, innovative, right? Like people weren't really kind of approaching it with that approach. And so, I'd do that. And from that, we'd look at their nutrition. We'd look at, are they in a calorie deficit? Are they in a surplus? What is their micronutrient status? Are they eating well? Are they eating bad? From there, we would, create a lifestyle and nutrition plan. And then after that, we'd actually get into the training. And so, that approach really kind of led me to be able to take someone that was, maybe overweight or out of shape, and transform their physiques in generally over about a 12-week period. Over a 12-week period, the average rate of fat loss. And I say fat loss because, as we know, like weight loss is one thing. And I think if someone is clinically obese, initially weight loss is something to look at because, they've got an excessive amount of weight to lose. But, we would generally see back then clients would lose between 0.5 to, up to 1 kilo a week. So that's,
Oh, wow.
1.2 to about 2.4 pounds per week over that initial 12-week program. And, that's really how I built my brand and business. It was through the business of transformations. Because, as as being in the industry yourself, like, you're only as good as your client results. And
Right.
so I focused in on early on with, using all of this learning that I had done to, really try and elicit transformations. And that was one thing, on the subject of learning, like, even though I'd initially spent 4 or 5 years full time doing study, I remember about 3 years into it around 2007, and I was getting good results. And then Charles Poliquin, the late Charles Poliquin, the legendary strength coach, he came out to Australia to do a workshop. And I'd been reading his stuff since I was in high school in the late 90s through T Muscle, T Nation, different men's muscle magazines and things like that. And he came out, and I remember going to his workshop thinking, like, I'm pretty hot stuff, right? Like, I know my stuff. At that time I was working with a few Olympic athletes from the New South Wales Institute of Sport, and I was like, yeah, I know my thing. And within 2 hours of listening to him, I realized how much I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that was a real eye opener for me because, to that time I'd been kind of, in the confines of my own city, Sydney, right? So Sydney, Australia, and kind of comparing myself against my domestic colleagues. And then here's this guy that's, internationally renowned. He comes out and I felt like an idiot. and I remember saying to him, I'm like, like at the end of the first day, I'm like, I just want to say, like, I learned more today than I probably have in my, the last year of my university degree. And I'm like, could I book you for a few hours just to pick your brain, to kind of learn from you? And, back then he was charging, like, I think it was about $700-800 US an hour for private consulting. And, yes, I was, doing 50, 60 PT sessions a week at about, $70 a session. So I was earning good money, but it was still a large investment. And I paid it because I wanted to learn one-on-one from this world leader.
You better have your questions lined up if you're doing a
Yeah.
session for $700.
But I guess what I'm trying to say to the students and the listeners, because obviously a lot of people listening to this right now are personal trainers, is success leaves clues. My journey as a PT and building up an international education business that has, educated tens of thousands of trainers around the world, it didn't come from me being cheap when it came to my own development, right? And so after that workshop with him, I remember he was talking about one of his students in the UK who just opened up this high-end performance gym. So it was like it had all of the Eleiko equipment, the Atlantis equipment, all of this specialist equipment, and they were doing boutique transformation-based programming. It was a business called Ultimate Performance, based out of the UK. It's founded by one of Charles's other students, Nick Mitchell. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. By that time, like, there would be no clean health if there was no Charles Poliquin. And, he was the guy that really kind of showed me that there was more to the industry than what I'd experienced within my own city. And that there was actually big opportunities to, if you look at the lifespan of PTs, here in Australia, the average career rate is about 18 months. So across a lot of the education institutes, people that go and get their qualifications, they'll only last 18 months in the industry. So, to be around 15, 20 years later, I think is a real testament to education. And just one thing I really want to drill home to anyone listening is like, you want to have a sustainable career following your passion and, for health and fitness, helping others. It's keep learning. Keep learning. That is, trainers ask me, like, what is the number one success tip for growing a successful business? It's like, learn how to get results and let your results do the talking. Because, you could do all these business courses in the world, but if you're unable to actually change the outcome of a client that has come into you feeling down, they're feeling bad, they're out of shape. If you're unable to get them into shape and to help them feel better, like you're not going to retain them as a client long term. You're not going to get referrals from them, and it's going to limit the ability to grow your business over a period of time.
Oh, Daine, this is awesome, man. You were definitely dropping some success bombs for our trainers here. And as you talk about being a lifelong learner, I think that that's something significant that we need to drive home for our fitness professionals, that this is not just get your certification and now you're good. Now you know what you need to know to be a trainer. And tell people regularly, as soon as you get your certification, now you have the baseline of what you should know, the very least amount of what you should know before you're qualified to be a personal trainer. So you know the least amount you should know for the rest of your career right now when you get certified. And then it's moving on beyond and past that. And you talk about something else too, and I think it's important to point out, is that you had some direction, right? And we've talked multiple times about mentorships and discussing with people. I'll be doing a lesson at the Optima conference on mentorships and becoming a mentor. And the thing is that it's hard to become a mentor if you've never had one yourself. And so we see that with your experience with Poliquin and the work that he's done. And one of the things that he talked about, he was a great strength and conditioning coach, but he always talked about lifestyle. He always, early on, before anybody was talking, like if you were a strength and conditioning coach, you did strength and conditioning. And what they did outside, if you're working with athletes, it's just like try to get the kids to go to sleep early enough and like not drink so much in their college careers. And it has shifted far beyond just like a Band-Aid approach to what to do with your lifestyle outside of workout sessions.
Well, look, if you look at it today, it's kind of led to, that term HPL, high performance lifestyle. You've got, blood sugar apps like Levels, you've got the Apple Watch, you've got all this technology that today, back when I was an active PT, back then, I wish that I had access to, right? Because, you can monitor blood sugar, glucose levels over their sleep. You can monitor their sleep. You can look at their REM sleep, their deep sleep, all these type of cofactors. You can look at their HRV. These are all things that I apply myself today, on myself, when I'm training every day. But with coaches today, the technology has given them, such a wide array of tools that weren't at our disposal even 5 years ago. And there's actually one thing I want to add further on the education is that I've always said this when I've mentored people, is that for the first 5 years that you're in the industry as a PT, you should be spending literally, in my opinion, about 80 to 90, but probably 90% of your education investment into becoming a better trainer. Not necessarily a better business person, all that type of stuff. Learn how to write diets and write training programs, and learn how to coach. So learn how to be able to use the power of EQ to influence, motivate, and inspire your clients, which is going to drive compliance, because compliance is the number one factor for results. You can have the best program in the world, but if the client doesn't follow it, it doesn't mean anything. Right. Conversely, you can have an okay program, but if they do every single thing on it, they're going to get results. So the first 5 years, I've always said 80, 90%. Years 6 to 10, it should be more 50-50. So, by that time, you're really trying to, like for me, 5 years in, I was just working out of commercial gyms as a PT. It took me 7 years to realize I want to go and open a gym, and then I ended up opening 3, and it took me having a mentor and some direction to do that. So, whilst you're going into that second stage of your career, you're still trying to you still need to keep your finger on the pulse in terms of learning about, the latest literature, what's working, what's not working, what's been debunked or not, etc. But you also want to be learning to level up yourself when it comes to your business, how to present yourself, your brand, if you hire people, what that looks like in terms of creating structures, and all this different type of stuff for them. And I'd say if you make it to year 10 and above, for me, it's now become 80-20, 80% in terms of business, marketing and sales, 20% just keeping my finger on the literature, looking at what's working, what's not working. And I'm pretty fortunate, we've got a lot of strategic partners around the world, Dr. Lane Norton, Dr. Bill Campbell, and a few others on our academic board that, literally working in the lab day in, day out with some of the latest sports science stuff out there in the world today. So when I need to know something, I just say, hey, what's the latest research on this? And I get it. So it saves my time.
I love that. It's nice for me too, because I do that with people at NASM. There's so many things I don't know, and just tapping somebody on the shoulder who can direct me to somebody else that knows what's up. And so it's nice just to know people that are smarter than you.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. If you can kind of use that as a framework, and I'm not saying it's foolproof, but it's kind of a process that I've given to a lot of trainers over the years is, spend your time getting good at your craft, and then over time the business will come. And with that, you'll be able to, have fulfillment within your career, actually doing something that you love. Because I think everyone generally gets into the fitness industry because it's a major part of their value alignment as a human being, health and well-being, whether it's with themselves and others.
Let me ask a question about change, right? So change. You were talking about being a fitness professional, being a personal trainer. And then you went on into opening your own gyms, right? So you started with 1. I'm assuming you didn't start with 3.
I see you've opened a few, haven't you, as well?
Yeah. I have 3, a 4th one coming soon. And my question to you, and this is in part for me, but a lot for other people who are thinking this too, what was the biggest transition, the biggest change when you were like, all right, this is my personal training business, and now this is a gym business, things that you need to think about, things you didn't think about, and then you're kind of punched in the gut with?
Look, I think as I mentioned to you offline when, we were having a pre-chat, pre-coming on, I'm a qualified PT.
Yeah.
I don't have a degree in business. I don't have a degree in marketing. I don't have a degree in sales. I've just learnt that on the fly. So I think the biggest transition for me was when you are a sole trader, and you've established your business and your brand, you are generally at the pinnacle of quality. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is you yourself are facilitating the service, and because it's your brand, you're generally going to do it better than anyone else. And I found as I brought people on, I was very fortunate. Like my first trainers that came on to work for me were actually clients of mine. So they were other personal trainers that I would say train for a powerlifting event or a bodybuilding event or a sporting event or whatever, or they just came to me to learn. So they already had that coach mentor relationship with me, and I'd already downloaded a lot of my key philosophies and principles into them. So they were kind of like mini me's with their own twist. So I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest learning curve was standardization of quality, i.e. quality control over your product as a PT. And I use the term product because at the end of the day, if you've got a gym or you're a PT, you are still, yes, you are selling a service, but it's also a product of you.
That's right.
So for me, it was learning that. And then the other thing was really just learning that, going from having to manage your own finances and your own timetable to managing the payroll, at one point, I had, circa 50 staff working for me through multiple gyms. I'm having to look at payroll. I'm having to look at performance management. I'm having to look at hiring ops directors and heads of departments and creating job descriptions and kind of learning all these things. And the first few years, I tried to do it all myself because that's just my nature. And it ended up causing me some problems because I was unable to let go and really delegate to people as I scaled that were better than me. And a lot of that was youth and ego and that kind of rolled into one. But that was a big learning curve for me. And I nearly, in 2015, I nearly lost everything. I ended up going, wow. Like we ended up having to, one of the businesses, because by 2014, it was interesting. Like we'd opened our first gym, we opened on 150 PT sessions a week. And then 4 months later, we were doing 550.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Right. And that was in an average price point of about 120 US per session. So you do the math on that, right? And, so I didn't have the systems in place to measure and scale that. And, in the first 2 years of that business, we were doing about 20,000+ PT sessions per annum, out of that one gym. And so going from, having myself and a few trainers working through a commercial gym to doing that volume of personal training sessions out of one business and then opening others, right, whilst at the same time, going to starting our education business because we'd had all of these requests from trainers, around the world on how we were getting these results. It was a really steep learning curve. So, learning to delegate.
I'm interested in that too. I'm interested in now there's another transition in life and in business on your end, right? So you went from being a trainer to opening your own facilities, and then you went from opening on your own facilities to opening a consulting and an education institute on basically how to do it. So what led to that? And then how did that become a business for you?
It kind of, as we were, because like by 2012, 2013, we were having like, whether it was Ben Pekowski, Mark Schaus, Dr. Rakowski, Milos Sarchev, Charles Poliquin, Phil Lerney, like Lane Norton, lots of big industry notables from around the world were coming out to Australia. They were doing workshops at our center as kind of the central point here in Australia. And so we were getting a lot of international PR and press. By that time, we'd been publicized in the newspapers. We were doing, articles in the Daily Telegraph, GQ magazine, and different stuff like that. So we were getting a lot of PR and press. And obviously with that came the fact that, over time, about 20% of our sessions that we were doing out of our PT business were actually other personal trainers wanting to go through the process themselves to learn how we did it. Right. And we were getting a lot of them. They'd come up to myself or our head of research and development, Stefan Ainef or Rawdon Dubois back then, and a few of our senior guys on like, hey, we want an internship, like we want to do mentorships. And so what I did was I took an internal staff development manual that I'd created back in 2010, And I'd created that for basically any clean health, any trainer that we would hire, because back then we obviously weren't an education institute. I would have to reprogram kind of some of the learnings that they had learned out in the industry to bring them to our level of knowledge. You know, when you think about it, like myself and some of our key educators back then had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars each on our education.
Wow.
So it was it was quite a gap between kind of that and then someone who'd just gotten qualified as a personal trainer and had worked for the industry for a year. And so that manual that I created was to bridge that gap. And I realized that it worked so well with our trainers. Like, why not just start teaching this to people outside, teach them the secrets of what we were doing in our real world laboratory, i.e. our gym. And so in 2012 that started, and then by 2014 we actually had a gym chain from interstate in Melbourne contract myself and one of my head educators to go down there for the week to spend a whole week with the entire staff educating. And so that was the first, interstate job that we got. And, you know, it was a big contract. It was a $30,000 contract back then. And, you know, I remember going down there and teaching. It was 7 straight days of teaching, but like, it wasn't work. It didn't feel like work. Right. Because it's, you know, as you probably noticed, I can talk. So, you know, it was just a great experience. And I'm like, you know what, like, I want to take this international. And I ended up speaking to Charles Poliquin at the time, you know, so the student speaking to the sensei. And 2 months later, the student was teaching with the sensei in Montreal.
Oh, cool.
You know, so we'd partnered up. He was doing his 3-day training. Then we were doing our 2 days on nutrition. And that was our first international gig. And I remember on the plane back from Montreal, you know, I was on this high, right? And, you know, we'd had 50 students in our workshop over there in Laval. And I remember coming back saying, you know what, in 2015, like, I really want to take this out there. And I actually, on the plane, I'm a big believer in what you put out and manifest will come back to you at some point. You know, it might come back as slightly different than what you put out, but signaling the intent will generally determine the outcome. And so I wrote out our schedule for the 2015. You know, we were going to do workshops in Hong Kong, the United States, Melbourne, Brisbane, Auckland, the UK. By the end of 2015, we had taught 42 workshops around the world and educated about 4,000 personal trainers. I'd spent, I'd say, about 6 or 9 months on the road educating and lecturing with 2 of our key staff members. But that's pretty much how it started. So, you know, I spent 2015 overseas pretty much whilst I left my operations team to kind of manage the gym. By that time, we'd opened a second one, and we're in the process of opening a third one with an institute attached to it that was going to be our company headquarters, which is a 1,000 square meter site. So that's about 10,000 square foot, I think, doing the conversion. And yeah, like that's kind of where the education started. And, you know, by the end of 2015, you know, I'd gotten into this position where the education business had gone really well. And the new site that we'd set up had gone really well, but 2 of the old gym businesses weren't doing too well. And were in quite a lot of debt. So I had to come in and kind of really restructure how we were doing things. And that was when I actually made the conscious decision then that to take my company to the next level, I had to make a choice. And that choice was, am I going to continue to be the founder and head coach, or am I going to be the founder and CEO? And I realized at that point, like, sure, I can hire in someone externally as a CEO to manage the business. But the reality is, like, I know my business better than anyone. Sure, there's a lot of business skills that I don't know right now, but I'm just going to have to teach myself. And so that's what I did. And, you know, a year later, we turned it around. Ended up selling off one of those gyms for a 7-figure amount to an offshore business. We consolidated the 3 sites into one. You know, we basically, that Chatswood site remained open until COVID last year. It still had in it by February of 2020. We were about a year into going online with our programs. We were still doing some live event workshops, and we still had a PT business within that site doing about 250, 300 sessions a week. But when COVID hit, I kind of, so I was in Asia when COVID broke out, right? So I was in Hong Kong in January of 2020. And we were on a cruise, and we were going from like Hong Kong to Vietnam. This is my family. And then from Vietnam to, Thailand. And I remember getting off at each, back then we didn't know what COVID was, right? And I remember getting off at each port, and they would have like the sensors to scan you. And I was like, this is not good. Like, this is like, some sort of movie I'm living in right now. And I remember coming back to Australia. In Australia, we thought we were immune, right? And because of our distance. And I remember saying to my leadership team at the time, I'm like, this is not going to, like, this is going to come here and we're going to get locked down. And this was in February of 2020. And they were looking at me, they're like, Daine, it's not going to blah, blah. I'm like, look, I trust my gut. And that's another business thing. Like, trust your intuition. Human beings, we're given gut feelings for a reason. When you learn to feel into it, it can be quite a powerful weapon. And so I made a decision actually to basically shut down my gym, which was still a 7-figure earning business, and to shut down our site. And then 3 weeks later, we got locked down, and we never opened up ever again since. So we've been 100%. We've been 100% remote working since then. Hence why I'm speaking to you from my home office right now.
Yeah.
And it was one of the, to be honest, it was one of the best business decisions I ever made. And I embrace change. I embrace change. I embrace the fact that we were about a year into our online journey, and that we really just had to go like all in. And look, going all in, the last 12 months, we've educated about 15,000 trainers online around the world. So, and with about 60% of them being outside of Australia. So, it's been my journey with Clean Health has been a very interesting one. I kind of liken it into 4 phases. We've got the PT phase, the gym phase, the education workshop phase, and now the ed tech online phase, which is where we are and where we'll stay.
You say that now, but there might be more options down the road. Phases 5, 6, 7.
True. Like, phase 5, I think for me at some point in the future will be, maybe some sort of an exit, or
right.
Something like that in the future, but for now we're doing good things. We've got a lot of interesting stuff in the pipeline, and in particular, the partnership that we formed with NASM, that we've just literally launched here in Australia over the last month. It's something that we're really excited about, kind of, helping to bring you guys to the Australian market. Because, as I mentioned, I think at the beginning, NASM is a company and business that I looked at and was, looking at the education and learning from, 15, 20 years ago, at the beginning of my PT journey. So to be partnered up with you guys now and to kind of be on a podcast with you guys now, there's always that, like, I always try and remain grateful for the small things that happen like this in life, because it's like, pinch myself, like, it's like, wow, like, what a journey.
That's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Daine McDonald. He's joining us talking about trainer success, and he's talking about making choices. And some of those choices involve change, and some of that change is based on strong foundations, but it doesn't mean you're going in the most comfortable direction. You're going in a direction based off the foundation that you can handle and you can make changes with. Daine, I do have a few questions for you. One is this: when you're working with your own program, right? So with your programming, and then you invite people in. So let's say Poliquin comes in, and Dr. Norton comes in. You have these people, and I guess now NASM, right? So you have a program that you're working with, and then you have people coming in from outside with maybe different or additional content, a different perspective on things. Yeah. How do you use that with your business and make that jive well?
Yeah, and look, that's a super good point. You know, like I'm a big believer in that you attract people of a similar mindset towards you and around you, right? So if I look at any of our strategic partners, whether it's NASM or NASM as I tend to call them, or I think in the UK as well. Lane, Bill, Sebastian Oreb. There's been different people that we've worked with over the years. There's a lot of philosophical alignment, firstly, in regards to the mission, right? So what is the mission? What is Clean Health? What is NASM? What is Lane Norton? What are all these different individuals trying to do? And really, if you step back and look at it, we are all trying to raise the level of education and overall professionalism for the fitness industry around the world, right? So we're trying to take a trainer that might have a limited knowledge and skill set, increase that knowledge and skill set so that they're empowered to actually make change and have a sustainable career doing what they love. So that's the first prerequisite, because like if you don't have that philosophical alignment, it's just not there. Right. And the second one is obviously having that mutual respect. I'll give you an example with Lane Norton. I've known Lane for since about 2012, nearly a decade now. And, for anyone that's followed him on social, he's got 1 million plus followers across his Instagram and Facebook accounts and whatnot. He's been one of the biggest proponents of the, if it fits in your macros movement and all that type of stuff over the last decade. And so initially when we met, him and I had very different philosophical approaches to nutrition. He was all about basically set your calories and eat what you want. Not necessarily so much like that, but like that was a bit, the overarching kind of philosophy maybe 10 years ago. Yeah. Whereas for me and what we were doing at Clean Health, it was very strict. It was, we would kind of, set the calories, set the macros, set the meal timing. Like we were very detailed. And that was probably because as well, the type of clients that we were working with were coming to us for a very serious result. And so when we first met, like our ideologies clashed, and I remember saying to him, like, look, you're obviously great at what you do. We obviously get good results too. Why don't you come out to our gym when you're out in Australia next time and have a workout and kind of see what we're doing? And so he did. He came out to the gym, to his credit. And I remember he walked in and, back in those days, like, as I said, we would have a lot of serious athletes as well as general population clients in our gym. And there's people squatting 440 pounds, deadlifting 650 pounds, 700 pounds, and people walking around like they could step up on stage and stuff like that. And remember, he walked in during kind of one of these peak periods, and he walked around, and I said to him, I'm like, Lane, so does it look like people here don't know what they're doing? And he's like, no, well, clearly you guys know what you're doing. And I'm like, exactly. So like, we just have a different opinion on things, a slightly different variation of how we're trying to achieve the same goal. And I think that's kind of the way I look at some of the strategic partners is we're all philosophically aligned. We all, we're all working towards the same outcome to help people and to get better results, but we're all just doing it slightly different. And that's right. Okay. You have to be comfortable within your own skin. And for me, I've always been very good at attracting people, the best and the brightest out there around me. And I'm kind of like the intermediary, can say, hey, you know what, like guys, settle down here and do that. And I think I get the respect from the PT side of the industry because, I did over 20,000 PT sessions myself as a personal trainer. I've been inactive as a PT since 2017. But I've walked in the shoes of a lot of these individual partners. And then obviously with, NASM, we've been able to build our business up to a point where we're able, to collaborate with you guys and provide, mutual value. And I think that's another big one too, is with any partnerships that you have, it needs to be a mutual exchange. It can't be one-sided. Even if one of the partners is, obviously bigger, we still need to be able to bring positivity to the relationship and complement each other in different ways. And I think, obviously with what we're doing with our partners overall and what we've started to do with NASM, I can really see that happening. And, like I said, we're super excited about it.
Yeah. As you're talking about that and the differences, it reminds me of a conference I had gone to years ago. And this was early to mid 2000s. And
The
went
heydays.
to a conference, and there was Mike Clark and it was a panel. Mike Clark,
Okay.
Tom Purvis, Juan Carlos Santana. I mean, and I can't remember the other guys, but it was all people that you're like, those guys don't agree with each other, right? Like they're all on the same thing. And the moderator's probably like, all right, going to pit somebody against each other. And I remember the question got asked about it, the differences. We got asked about the differences. And it was Juan Carlos Santana who said, I think we probably agree on 95% of everything, but people like to focus on the 5% we differ on. And that's, I think that's a great way to look at it. Like we're all out here trying to do the same thing, and it's create successful fitness related, performance related outcomes for our clients. What's best for them? And there's perspective. And everybody's perspective is shaped by their life, right? From their experiences and their education and their clients and their athletes that they work with. So everything is molded through your experience and through your education. And it's not that different, but there are differences, and it's okay. Those differences are okay. And I think that it's valuable to look at where people are and see more what aligns, and looking at the outcomes that we can provide for people instead of arguing over, because it happens in the industry so much, over minutia and over nonsense.
I agree.
It's too much out there. And, I also feel like this day and age, people are just looking to argue, and they can sit behind a keyboard and do it without any consequence. And that's why the cages get rattled so much. And
that's one piece of advice, that I give trainers, today is like, if I go back, if I could, tell myself one thing, 10, 15 years ago, it's not to care what other people think.
Yeah.
Like, and I think human beings get so like, oh, they said that, or she said that, or he said that, or whatever. Yeah. It's like, just focus on, the more you focus on you and doing you, becoming the best version of you that you can be, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And I think, what you said before was spot on. Like when you peel it back with all of these different experts, everyone's trying to do the same thing. We're all just doing it in a slightly different way. So I think, that's one thing that I've learned with having all of these different partnerships. And a lot of people have always said, like, Daine, how do you juggle all these big egos? It's like, well, I guess I've got a little bit of an ego myself, right? But at the end of the day, it's just learning to understand people, and that it's okay to have a different point of view. And just because somebody has a different point of view, it doesn't mean that you need to get reactive to that. As you said, people are shaped by the experiences that they've had, the days, weeks, months, and years before meeting you. So, yeah.
I love that you said that. It reminds me of a story. I met a guy at my wedding, a friend of my wife's, and he was such a cool guy. Like, I just met him and I was like, this guy, it reminded me of Lenny Kravitz. Like, everything about him was awesome. And Jennifer, my wife, told this story about somebody that was talking about him, saying something about him, and they felt the need to go and let this guy know. And they told him, and he just looked at him and he said, their opinion of me is none of my business. And I thought, I wish I was that cool. Like, that's something that stuck with me for so long, that somebody else's opinion of me is none of my business. If I'm doing the best I can, I am focusing on my purpose and my path, the direction I need to take that helps me and my family and my clients get the outcomes that they're looking to get, then everybody else, it doesn't matter.
And like, I think having that philosophy, like, if I'd, for example, if in 2015, when I ran into some business difficulties, had I cared about what people were saying about me, I wouldn't have had the resilience to turn it around, rebuild it, and then, make a seven-figure profit from it, right? So it's having that kind of perseverance as well. I think it's a key thing. Like, the fitness industry, I think when you've been around it as long as you and I have been, like, it's been through so many different changes. I think personal trainers today, with organizations like NASM, what we're doing, stuff like that, there are so many opportunities to learn from people that have made all of the mistakes that you don't need to make. I always try and say, like, when a trainer says, hey, what's the benefit of learning from you guys? I'm like, well, you'll learn how to not make mistakes.
Right.
Because we've made them for you. So do this and it will show you how not to make the mistakes.
I can't think of anything better than from learning from other people's mistakes. So I think that's a solid outlook. Any other things that you want to address with the partnership between you and NASM down there? That sounds pretty exciting. So I just want to find out what's going on.
Yeah. Look, so obviously it's something that we'd been working on behind the scenes with you guys over the last several months, and we launched it last month. So basically, what we've done is we've combined some of our key core products with some of your guys' key core products to create an amalgamated international personal trainer specialist program. So basically what this is for somebody that wants to get into the fitness industry, they can do this program here in Australia, but it allows them to be duly qualified and registered both in North America and Australia as well. So it's obviously, as you know, like a lot of the time the certs don't marry up in the countries and things like that. So we've amalgamated this together to kind of, have a bit of bilateral relationships between the governing bodies. But also it integrates the nutrition. So it obviously has the CNC program integrated into it, the CPT with some of our stuff. So it really kind of, we believe gives like trainers the very best chance to kind of start their career off on the right foot. And learn not just about training but nutrition as well, because and when we say nutrition, we're obviously talking lifestyle as well, because that's the other 23 hours a day when you're not in the gym. And if we go back to kind of my story with how I founded Clean Health, it was really about focusing on the other 23 hours a day. So that's kind of been the key core focus of what we're doing. We've obviously also brought in some of the other NASM products into the Australian market. So like the stretching and flexibility coach course. I mean, we think that's quite an important one. It's not something that we do. So you spoke previously about, synergistically working together, things that you might do and other partners might not do. So, there are certain things that NASM does that we're not specialists in. And obviously, having myself and our IP and education team, like kind of going through the course content, like, we don't put our hands to anything that isn't the best of the best. We've spoken about some of the industry titans that we've worked with over the last 2 decades. So we've brought that in. The virtual coach as well. We think that's a real big one right now in the Australian market. Like, unfortunately, half of Australia right now is in lockdown. We're under some of the tightest restrictions in the world when it comes to kind of, this whole pandemic side of things. So a lot of PTs are having to shift their business online or go into more of a hybrid model. So we're utilizing that. And even actually as well, the MMA certification that you guys offer.
Oh, yeah.
There's a big, much to Nathan Highland from NASM. He's like, hey, Nate. So there's a big kind of interest on that in the Australian kind of market as well, because MMA is quite a big thing here. So look, we're obviously slowly but surely integrating some of the NASM offerings into our catalog of stuff that we do here in Australia, and really kind of filling some of those gaps that we don't cover and have the expertise in. Because again, we talk about expertise. Our expertise is very much in kind of, fat loss transformations, building muscle, athletic performance, nutrition, stuff like that. But some of those other specialty things are not things that we've worked with. So, that's where we feel the real partnership can complement each other quite strongly here in the Australian market.
Oh, well, I have to say, it sounds like NASM has found a quality partner down in Australia. So Daine McDonald, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and to share a little bit about your story. And, here's what I like. And this is why the conversational podcasts are so nice, where it's not just an interview, right? That you can just kind of talk it out and hear somebody explain from expertise, from experience, from education, what life has been like and the journey. But here's what it is. It's the perspective of that journey. And we see a lot of times failures and we see successes, and those are valuable. Both failures and successes are both valuable. And being wildly fearful of failures, and trust me, I'm fearful of them. I don't want them. I'm aiming towards success. But what are the changes and directions that you're taking? And there are people out there that want bigger. They want better. They want more. They have aspirations. They have dreams. And then they have fears that are blocking the way, things that are stopping them from doing it. And I think that some fears are rational, and some fears need to be looked in the eye and walked back.
Definitely. Look, I have a quote on this that I'll leave our listeners with. It's quite simple. Failing to fail is failing.
Yeah.
Right. So, we talk about success. We talk about wanting to expand our career and ourself. It's like sometimes you just got to give it a go. It's okay. Like, failure can provide you with some of the best life lessons that you can ever hope for. Sometimes getting your back put into a corner and having to dig your way out, like that's where you build resilience, strength, and character. And, for me, the failures that I've had have led me to kind of have this resolve now within my career and self that is, pretty unshakable, because I've had the highs, I've had the lows, and now I just appreciate, I appreciate and I'm grateful for the small things. And I think that's another important thing too, is just be grateful. Like it's your career as a PT and in life, it's a step-by-step process. We all want to conquer the world and do X, Y, Z, but it's sometimes it doesn't happen in a day or a week or a month or even a year. It takes years. So just accept that, enjoy that and be grateful for it.
And create a strong foundation. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Like, create a strong foundation, and then you're less concerned about the dangers of building on top of that. So Daine McDonald, thank you so much for taking time to be with us. If there is a way that you can direct people through to your social media, to your website, if they could reach out via email, what are some of the best ways that they can find out?
Look, simplest thing is our website is cleanhealth.edu.au. You can follow us on Instagram at Clean Health Fitness Institute. And then my personal one on Instagram is just at Daine McDonald. They're probably the three main things. And hey, look, if you've listened to the show and love what you heard, feel free to send me a message. I always take the time to respond to my DMs and kind of, give feedback and insight to trainers, because, I was once in their shoes myself. So we're here to help.
For sure. Thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of it. If you have questions for me, you can reach out to me on Instagram at dr.rickricchey, or you can email me at rick.richey@nasm.org. This has been the NASM-CPT Podcast.
See you guys.